Want to introduce you to a book about the Salvation Army. Some of you will know that myself and my wife were Salvation Army officers for ministers of religion for 20 years, and the group of cadets, when we trained to be Salvation Army officers, each group of cadets is given a name. Our group of cadets trained from 1974 to 1976 and were given the name of Overcomers, so hence the name of the book, Overcoming. And it's a little bit of a history of the Salvation Army and a little bit about the work that I did and Linda did. And for anybody interested in social history or the history of the Salvation Army, I'm sure you'll find this book interesting. I'll read you a couple of chapters from the book. Here's a little bit from the first chapter. The founders of the Salvation Army did not set out to create another denomination. In 1865, a collection of Christian ministers formed a loose organisation called the East London Christian Revival Union. They united to take the Christian message to thieves, to prostitutes and drunkards in the East End of London who wouldn't normally be seen attending church. The ministers involved to preach in tents, in stables, empty shops, music halls, theatres, converted public houses, and more often than not they preached in the street. The original preachers were from many different Protestant denominations, all working together, and the intention was to encourage new converts to attend nearby churches. But in practice, the existing churchgoers didn't make the new converts very welcome. So they kept coming back to the music hall or the street meetings where they felt most comfortable. But in any event, along with the changes in name, the East London Christian Revival Union continued to grow and morphed into the East London Christian Mission, and then to the Christian Mission, and then ultimately into the Salvation Army. William Booth was a Methodist minister. He'd initially been invited as a guest preacher, but his preaching and organisational skills were such that he soon became the organisation's General Secretary, or General for short. In 1878, he was dictating a letter in which he described those involved in the work as a volunteer army. But he quickly substituted the word salvation for the word volunteer, and the Salvation Army was born as an army of evangelists. During the 1980s, the Salvation Army gradually used more military terms. The general remained in overall command. Volunteers wore uniform and called themselves soldiers. They called its mission halls corps or citadels, and ministers became officers with various ranks. Militarisation continued with flags and banners, marching and bands, and a military-style uniform, all of which helped to attract non-churchgoers to the new style of church service. From the beginning, the Salvation Army was also engaged in social work. It felt the best way of helping people escape from poverty, drunkenness or prostitution was a dual approach of Christian conversion matched with practical help and support. I'd like to continue by reading another short chapter from the book. This is about a time when Linda and I were working in Glasgow looking after homeless men in a hostel situation. Can you have a look at Jimmy? I think he's got a problem. Jimmy, by the way, wasn't his actual name. I've anonymised him for his own sake and mine. Jimmy had arrived at the Glasgow Salvation Army Hospital for homeless men a couple of days before, but I'd been off work both those days and I was catching up on the new residents. I found him sitting in a chair, staring straight ahead, if staring was the right word, for Jimmy was completely blind. It wasn't the blindness that was the problem, it was the rest of him. He was covered in sores and continuously scratching. "Hello, Jimmy," I said. "I understand you've got a problem." "Yes," he said, "it's my eczema. It's getting worse and it really itches." He spoke quietly and I'd drawn closer to listen, but I soon pulled back as I saw that his clothes were crawling with lice. "I've got just the thing for eczema," I said. "It's a lotion you add to bath water. It's really good. It'll soon have you sorted out as good as new. I persuaded Jimmy that a bath would help stop his itching, and I led him at arm's length to the bathroom and ran the bath as he got undressed. I gingerly placed all his clothes into a black bag as he dropped them onto the floor, and soon he was only wearing his socks. He seemed reluctant to take his socks off, and I shared his reluctance as I saw the state of them. The bottom of his legs were black with scabs. Blood had dried into his socks, and they were as stiff as cardboard. It was difficult to tell where his legs stopped and where his socks began. "When did you last change your socks?" I asked. "Last time I had a bath," he said. "So how long ago was that?" This time he had to think about the answer. "About 6 months ago," he said, eventually. "Tell you what," I said. "Why don't you leave your socks on for now? We'll take them off once you've been in the bath for a while." He agreed and gingerly stepped into the bath and sat down. I left him for a while and used the anti-lice powder to fumigate the bag full of his old clothes before collecting fresh clothes from our emergency store. Placing a broom handle in the centre of his bed to create a wigwam, I sprayed anti-lice powder inside before turning my attention to his wardrobe. All his clothes were crawling with lice, so I gave them a good dusting before closing and locking the wardrobe door. By the time I returned to Jimmy, the water had time to soak into his socks. I pulled at them gingerly, but as I pulled, his skin started coming away. I left them and was regretting there was no doctor available. "Your eczema's really bad," I said. "It'll probably take a few treatments, and your feet are particularly bad, so we'll leave your socks on for a few days. What we'd better do is give you a bath once a day for the next couple of weeks and a change of clothes every day. That's probably the best way of getting rid of your eczema." Jimmy agreed, and he seemed really grateful. And from then on, Linda, that's my wife, Linda and I set up a daily routine. I'd run Jimmy's bath, fumigate his clothes, and treat his feet as best I could. Linda washed and ironed his clothes after fumigation and returned them for him to use the following day. It was almost a week before I eventually managed to cut his socks away without doing too much extra damage to his feet, and at long last I could put powder directly onto his feet and not onto his socks. It took several weeks for the bulk of his scabs to disappear and several months before his feet were back to anything like normal. But I don't think Jimmy ever realised he had lice. To this day, he probably still believes he just had bad eczema. Well, that's a short excerpt from a couple of chapters of this book, Overcoming the Salvation Army, history of my time in the Salvation Army and my wife's time in the Salvation Army, social work, core work, evangelistic work, welfare work is all contained in this short but interesting, I think, book for anybody interested in the Salvation Army, interested in social history. You can get it in all major bookstores. It's available online too from places like Amazon, and it's also available online as an ebook. There's further information on my own website, on my publisher's website, and I hope you enjoy a copy. If you do, just if you do, whether you do or not, I hope you will provide some feedback. Let me know how you get on with the book and whether you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.